Hey there, my name is Cameron, also known as Venus Theory, and today I'm here with Loopmasters to show you a couple of different ways to flip a sample and make it your own. Using samples is a lot of fun, but I think one other way to elevate your sample-based productions is to try and transform the sample to make it unique to you and your music. That way you're not using the same sample that someone else has used, which can be a little bit awkward. All of the techniques I'm going to demonstrate here today can be done in any DAW, and it's a lot of fun, and sometimes transforming a sample, even in some of the most simple ways, can totally change the direction of a track. So let's dive in and get started. One of the first techniques I wanted to talk about is a lot of fun with melodic samples, and that's extreme time stretching. Now, normally you might stretch a sample by a couple BPM because your song is at a different tempo, but by taking a sample and really stretching it out, like maybe even doubling the length of it, can cause some interesting artifacts and changes to the sound that can give it a totally new character. Here in Loopcloud, let's dig around for a melodic sample that we could use. Maybe we could grab something from the Arabian Flutes pack here. Let's open that up and grab just some kind of sample that jumps out that might be good. Let's do maybe something with a bit of a longer character to it in maybe a minor key. Let's dig around, and I think this one looks good. Let's see what that sounds like. Cool. So I really like that one. Let's buy it and bring it into the DAW here and stretch it out and see what we can transform this into. Most DAWs feature a couple of different stretching algorithms, and each one is suited to stretching out audio in a different way. So this original sample is at 122. Let's maybe slow it down to 80 BPM and see what we've got. Now that's kind of fun, but I think we've all done that before. So let's set this to the original tempo. Now what I want to do is double the length of this. So I'm going to scale it out, and then we'll change our stretching algorithm here. So instead of stretching it, which is going to slice it and then drag those slices out, we'll try repitching it. So since we're doubling this, it's going to take it an octave down and provide kind of this cool halftime effect. So with that in mind, what we could try is maybe duplicating this out. We'll set the original back to its tempo, and we'll reverse this top one here. Now we'll layer these two together, and we'll get something that's maybe a bit more interesting overall. With that, we start to get some interesting harmonies and layers out of the sample that weren't there before. So we could try grouping these together, and maybe just adding something like a quick reverb and delay unit could totally change this and give it a completely different vibe. Now with a really expansive reverb and just making it really wet, this is also a great way to create some backing ambiences for your tracks. If we just use this octave down version through a really big reverb, and then maybe add something like a quick filter. Now we've got a really cool ambient backing piece we can use to lay down the foundation of our track. This same technique can be a lot of fun with drums as well, because with time stretching, you can get a lot of weird artifacts. Here, I've grabbed just some random drum loop, and let's stretch this out maybe just a couple of bars. And we start to get these weird grainy textures, but if we start taking this out to the extreme, we can start to get some interesting hits that we could chop out of this and repurpose as a new sample. Similar to melodic content, by altering the mode, we can change this to be a repitch algorithm that's going to pitch it down for as long as we stretch it, or pitch it up if we shorten it. So now we've turned this into some spooky kind of industrial hits, but if we shorten this and bring the pitch way up, we've got kind of an interesting top layer that we could filter out the bottoms from and use this maybe for some kind of drum and bass track. Another really easy and fun technique is to turn a sample into an instrument. So here I found another one of these flute loops, and right here in this section, we've got a nice sustained tone, which we can take advantage of using something like a sampler. Now I've brought this into a sampler here, and I've trimmed out just that section with the long sustained note. I've just made sure this is in the right key, and now we can do a couple of quick things to turn this into a playable instrument. Let's enable the looping function of the sampler here, And we'll take the loop region to make it right around where that tonal center is. We'll zoom in a little bit and make sure we're at a pretty good point to create a loop. We'll crossfade a little bit, and now with a bit of added delay and reverb, I've taken this flute sample, added a filter, shaved off a little bit of the attack, and turned it into more of almost a synth, maybe mellow lead, or almost kind of an electric piano tone. This technique is really fast and easy, but also a really great idea to blend in against the original sample. Because you're using the sample to create this new instrument, you end up having this very similar tonal palette for your track that all melds together really nicely. So from one sample, you could not only have the sample, but also maybe a lead, a pad, and even a bass from that same sound set. So it'll all blend together really nicely in the end and sound very consistent. Pitch shifting is another great way to explore a sample and change the overall feel of it. As you probably know, you can take a sample and pitch it up or down a couple of semitones and change the overall character and vibe of the sample. But I find by going to extremes like octaves or several octaves away, you sometimes get some interesting artifacts and different characteristics to a sample that you might not otherwise have thought to explore. With this in the DAW here, we could pitch this down maybe 3 or 4 semitones. And we've maybe just changed the key of our track to match it, and that's all well and good. But by taking this down an octave, or even 2 octaves, and maybe from here we could experiment with things like reversing or time stretching the samples. Let's do that. We start to get this gritty, grainy quality to things, and we could repeat this process several times by rendering this out as a new sample and then pitching it back up or back down, or re-reversing it, adding processing, and then pitching it around again, or lots of other ideas. And it's a really fun way to mask something into your track that might not otherwise work. If we were doing something maybe very dark and heavy, the original sample might have sounded a bit cheesy, but by doing something like this, we've added this darker, maybe heavier quality to the sample. Finally, one last way to flip a sample is the time-honored tradition of simply slicing and dicing it, and I can't think of a better way to demonstrate this than with some drum breaks. So let's find a drum loop here in this pack and find something that might work well. So what we can do is take some kind of drum loop, maybe this one, and we'll take this and slice it based on the grid or the timing of our DAW. And then what we can do is bring that into some kind of drum sampler instrument and play back these slices in different orders. In a way, it's a lot like granular synthesis, but it's a really fun way to flip a sample into something totally different and change the rhythm or the order of the chords or whatever it is you want to reorder and mess with. Now, within your DAW, what you can do is slice this based on either quarter notes or eighth notes. I find that works best. Or if your DAW provides some kind of auto slicing function, that's easy as well. So I'm going to auto slice this to a new drum machine. I'll do this based on quarter notes. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to chop these out. And now we've got all of those samples cut, but it's still the same drum loop. So if I play this back on this drum machine now, and we play the original sample, it's the exact same thing. But where the fun really begins is going into this sample here in the piano roll, and we'll start messing around with the notes or the slices. So here we've got a snare. Let's maybe drop that down. Get another kick there. Maybe we'll change this section to be halftime because we're on beat 3. So we'll move that there. Add some extra shuffle there. And now we've changed that to this. Now, with a little bit of finagling here in the DAW, I've transformed this original loop, which is just a pretty straightforward drum and bass loop, into a nice grooving halftime loop. This works really well with drums. This works well with melodic content, vocals, or anything of that nature. You can chop this up based on different slices, bring it into a drum machine, and play them back using your MIDI controller or just by reordering the notes in the piano roll and get something entirely new out of the sample, really in only a couple of minutes. And that's really all there is to it. Turning a sample into something that's unique to you and your music doesn't have to be this long, labored process. It can be as simple as pitching things around, stretching things out, or slicing it and reordering it in just a few minutes. That wraps everything up for this one, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome. For more information on Loopcloud or to try it for yourself today, you can head over to loopcloud.com.